Hi there, this is Stacey Barr, and with me is Aicha Tuma Arakan, and she is a measurement consultant with a background as a statistician and around 15 years of work experience in measurement. Now, this is actually our second interview with Aicha about her facilitation of PUMP with operational teams. Now, since her first Pump Community case study with us, Aicha has become a member of our global licensed pump team as a pump contractor for Europe, and she's personally based in Turkey. You're going to easily work out why we wanted Aicha on our team because of how well she engages with and adapts the experience of measurement to suit the teams that she works with. And the teams she works with experience quite profound shifts in their appreciation for and their ability to use measures to drive improvements in their work. Now, this interview is about one of Aicha's latest teams who work in a factory. The team had not experienced measurement before, but quickly came to a point where they have a very solid and growing performance culture now. So Aicha, thanks for joining us again for another case study.
Hi, Stacy. Hi, everyone. I thank you for the opportunity. Actually, it's always a pleasure for me, and I'm very happy to be a part of the Global Pump team. It's a wonderful team to be on, and I hope everyone will enjoy the interview and find it useful and inspiring somehow.
Somehow, I think for certain, because Aicha, one of the things you're very good at is practicality, which we'll find out as we start talking. Would you like to start by telling us a bit about the factory team and the company that you facilitated this particular pump implementation for, and a little about their pump journey?
Okay, the company is a well-established factory in Turkey. They manufacture a broad range of equipment for the medical sector. We started by implementing 2 pump pilots in 2018, I'm sorry, and we did the strategy level with pump with the whole management team, and then we cascaded their strategy to the operational level with different teams, separate teams of measures, and now since December 2018, we've been monitoring performance. And we're continuously using pump as their defined measurement process.
That's brilliant. At the start of their journey with pump, Aicha, what was it like getting ownership of measures? Because ownership is something that's often a challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, it sure is. So at the beginning, they have designed their own measures as a part of pump, and they had buy-in. We defined department managers as the performance owners of operational results and measures, as it's also a part of pump, but at first I think it was only something documented for most of them. Some managers were more supportive of the process, including the 2 managers that we had made the pilots with. They were more familiar with the process, and some were more neutral. I think they were trying to observe what's going on from a distance and see what will happen, because as always, measurement is something that caused some cynicism and some question marks in people's minds. Still, using measures as pump suggests it was all new for them, and the concept of ownership was, I think, not internalized as it's supposed to be. And I think we're not still there yet for everyone, but we started to see signals of increasing ownership, I think.
That's good. It's not a quick fix to just because you're using pumps, suddenly everyone feels ownership. I think you're right in describing that it is something that takes a little bit of time, and it's something that people feel. It's like you say, it's not something that is documented only. It's something people feel, and they get more and more comfortable feeling that when they see what's really going to happen with the measures and they see other people taking ownership as well. So yeah, that feels like a really completely natural experience for them. Aicha, at what point did you really see the ownership start to increase for people?
I think at the beginning, what was missing was more communication and dialogue around measures, and they in their daily routines. You know, even though they have designed their own measures and they had buy-in, it's easy to turn back to your daily lives if you don't start actually using those measures. So we were preparing a monthly report, but communication, the dialogue around measures was being done, as far as I know, quarterly during the management review meetings. So just to start a more frequent dialogue, we started to organize monthly reviews for strategic teams and gathered related performance owners. We first started with only performance owners, then in time they wanted to include more people within their teams, and I thought that was a good sign. And I realized the most obvious sign of ownership when during one of those review meetings we were talking about a potential performance signal that we observed in one of the production process measures. So let me tell you the story from the beginning. We're tracking the percentage of defective products in the final test as one of the production process measures. When we first measured, it was by the end of 2018, it was higher than it was expected, and they targeted it to decrease. And because the negative impact of this result was increasing costs and late delivery times. So they produce a wide range of products in the factory, and the measure included all of them as a cumulative. So as part of the root cause analysis back then, to understand why the numbers are so high, we drilled down the defects into different product groups. We used a Pareto diagram to do that, and we saw that the majority of the defective products fall into one specific group, which was a relatively new product group at that time. And it consisted of approximately 10 different products in it. The percentage of defective products in final tests for that group specifically was high, and the variability was also high. So we decided to track that group separately together with the cumulative measure. And they took several actions. They identified several actions specific to that group. And so I prepared a graph that everyone can see what I was talking about, and the measurement was done specifically for this group. And during 2019, we started to observe a potential improvement signal, and we were not 100% sure then. I think it was about around December 19. You see a few points were under the central line in the graph, and so we kind of thought that was a potential signal, but the production manager was thinking they have actually decreased the number of defects per product as a result of the actions they have taken. They were sensing it, but they didn't have any measures for that. So he suggested that we should measure that also, which is the second graph that I prepared for you. You see there was actually a decrease in the number of defects per product. So they were happy to observe that they are doing that what they're doing is actually working. They saw that on the graph. So that what's started to make them happy, you know.
It would make me happy too. It's really convincing when you've got a feeling that you've done something to make something better, and then when the measure shows you in such an obviously clear way, it really is a great confirming feeling, and it's almost that time to celebrate, really.
Yeah, I agree.
So when they saw these signals, Ayça, how did they respond? Like what happened next?
At first, I think it increased their motivation, and during I was talking about a meeting in December, and in that meeting, it made me so happy to hear that the production manager took an action to make regular meetings in the production area, including everyone possible in his team, to review the measure results, to go over the defects and the reasons, identify the causes to improve the performance. And as far as I remember, that was when I first got very excited and talked to you about this case, you know. Anyway, we continued measuring and tracking, and when they measured the March data, you can see in the graphs, there was a jump in both graphs, to upwards jump, and we realized that almost about 2 weeks ago. And we suspected whether it was an outlier or not, but it turned out to be related to something about their process that caused the problem, which also increased the variability and required standardization. It was a very complex group of products, to add as a specific detail, but they were able to pass the symptoms. I mean, they were able to dig into their process to identify the underlying root cause, and they took the appropriate actions, I think, and we are hoping to see the result of these actions in the following upcoming months. So I think this is the kind of ownership that should be created in any organization about measures. They're continuously searching for ways to improve performance. They're using their team they're using all of their team members to do this, and they're using measures to verify those improvements. And it was a lesson, I think, for all of us, that identifying the most effective action requires time. It needs observation and needs diving into the process. You have to identify the root causes correctly first in order to take the correct actions. For example, in our case, the first set of actions were useful to an extent. They definitely decreased the defect per product, but the percentage of defective products was still not at the level they desired, and it suddenly increased in March. And with a closer look, they were able to identify the problems with the highest impact. And I think now they're taking actions that will make the shift in a more permanent way. And this experience also showed all of us that you need to, it proved that you need to have a stable process first before taking any improvements further, any permanent improvements. The actions they took are almost all about increasing standardization, you know. And I think this time they will see more permanent improvements in their results.
That's the important thing that I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't intuitively know, that you can't improve something that's chaotic, because by definition, something chaotic is not within your control. And it's why we talk about standardization, I guess, because standardization is a way to take some of the chaos away, to make something more in your control. And of course, when something's more in your control, you can get it to improve the way you'd want it to. And I like what you added, Aicha, also about the improvements will stick, they'll stay there. The improvements that they make will be improvements that stay until they make another set of improvements in the future, probably. Yes. I think that's a really, really important insight for everybody, is that, you know, you can't improve something that's chaotic and not in your control. So that's clearly an example of a measure that has changed the way this team thinks about the performance of the work they do. Has having good measures changed the way that in general they manage performance in the factory?
Well, I think it did. First of all, the content of their quarterly management review meetings with their senior management has changed. I was attending them, so I know as a person. So they started to review their strategic goals and their related measure performances as the major part of the agenda. And the measures have the power to highlight the performance gaps and help focus the discussions in those meetings. And with the more frequent strategic team meetings, the dialogue between different process owners around measurement has increased, and they took some very valuable actions. I'm not talking about just this case in general, in other areas also. And finally, the production team's own meetings, I think, moved the conversation to the lowest level in the organization and is probably the most important change. Hopefully, this movement will spread to other teams soon. I really intend to encourage the other teams by making the results of the production team visible to everyone more clearly. And what they say about what's changed in their managing performance is that they think performance owners are more focused and determined now, and they can take proactive actions in accordance with the measure results. But still, I think more time is needed for a complete internalization. We're still not there yet for all.
Remind us how long you've been working with this company, Aicha? With Pump?
With Pump, the pilots were made in 2018, and we've been tracking performance since December 18.
Yeah. So I would say that for normal everyday companies to shift from having no real deliberate approach to measuring and using measuring to improve performance, to shift from there to a point where the whole or the vast majority of people in the organization are engaged and using measures and have high ownership and are routinely getting performance to improve, that's at least a 3 to 5 year journey. So you're maybe a little more than 2 years into the journey with these people, and they're already changing and shifting, and I think you've got every hope of reaching that point of, I guess I call it performance measurement mastery with this client if they keep going the way they're going, easily within 3 or maybe just a little bit more than 3 years. So it's terrific. I think the progress is great. So this journey that they've been on with you, it's clearly shifting their performance culture. So in what ways have you observed that performance culture changing?
I think more team and dialogue-based culture is being created within the organization. It's not happening fast, but I can observe this change in the quality of the discussions they are making during the meetings. And even if it's the beginning of the journey, I can observe the change in these 2 years. And another indicator, I guess, is the quality of the discussions and comments we received during the last measure gallery that we organized in December. We received valuable feedback about performance results and the related measures, which didn't also happen in the first ones. The first measure galleries were different than the last one. And they think that, in their own words, their faith in the performance tracking has increased. I asked this to them, and they think that they started to work as a team instead of depending on personal success. And they can observe this from the way they present the results in the monthly meetings, and they now answer the questions with numbers instead of simple facts that are already known to everybody.
Oh, that's powerful too. Answering the questions with numbers and not just the simple facts that are obvious to everyone. I love it.
So they're both observing themselves, and I can, as an outsider, can observe it in their.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, since our last case study with you, Aicha, you had already had some brilliant insights into using Pump as a tool for improving measurement with a client. But since then, have you come to any new insights about using Pump with teams like this?
First of all, I realized the importance of having continuous dialogue around measures. Definitely, Pump is not a one-time project that ends with identifying actions, not completing the 8 steps, but you have to implement it as a continuous loop if you want it to work. And also a great leadership, the necessity of leadership is become very obvious to me. There should be leaders in the organization that believe in the benefits of measurement and try to improve performance by dragging their teams into the process. It cannot be done on a personal basis. This is a teamwork. It needs dialogue and including the people who work on the processes.
Yeah.
And observing an improvement signal in measures, even maybe the possibility of observing it, which becomes easier with pump, I guess, with the strong measures, it's probably one of the best ways of making leaders believe in the process. So I think the core point is that ownership can be gained when people are tracking the right measures and wanting to see the signal in the results. In our case, just the possibility of observing a signal and just observing one signal we had was triggered the performance owner and pushed down the performance tracking to the lowest level in his team, making him want more people involved in the process to identify causes and taking actions, because he really wanted to see the results. And he said in these COVID days, even they didn't stop the process, with much less people and staying more distant to each other, they're still looking for answers. The last point in March, we observed it 2 weeks ago, and yet they identified the causes, they talked to each other and did their process, even in these COVID days. So I think it's a very strong belief in the measures.
It really does seem that way. I love that. They sound like a team that have really embraced this whole measurement thing, and not because they have to do it, clearly because it's opened up something inside themselves about being able to have more influence over the work they do, and being able to find ways to make it better and better. And that's so satisfying. And maybe, as you say, in these COVID days, maybe that's a way to have a little bit more sanity and feel like we really still have some control, that we're not going to throw everything out of the window just because we're in a very, very challenging time. They're using their new skills to keep pushing forward and making progress. So that's pretty exciting. Aicha, thank you so much for sharing this story with us of how the team's gone. I think there's quite a few pearls of wisdom throughout the story you've shared with us, and I'll look forward to reflecting on them again and pulling them out and making them really clear, so that everybody else can learn from them and make sure they notice them as well. If anyone wants to reach out and connect with you personally, Aicha, are you happy for that to happen? Are there any particular ways you'd prefer that to happen?
Well, however they prefer. I have my email address, as you can see in the slide, and I have my website. You can reach me through my email anytime and anywhere you like. I will be glad to have a talk or chat with you, or anything that I can help with you. I'll be very happy.
Thanks so much, Aicha. You're very generous, and it's just wonderful watching over the last couple of years your mastery of Pump in facilitating it for teams. It's brilliant. Thank you so much for your time in sharing this.
I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, Stacey. It's always nice to talk to you.
Likewise.